I'm Cara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Emily Fogg. Emily is a teacher turned business owner. She started the award-winning Wise Owl Tuition in January of 2020 because she knew with her 14 years of teaching experience that there were many students who were left behind and desperately needed quality learning intervention. Wise Owl Tuition offers a range of services to children aged 6 to 16, specializing in supporting neurodiverse learners with ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and autism. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Well, I love this bio, but why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Okay, so my name's Emily. I live in Perth, Australia, and I'm a mum of a little girl. She's almost three in a couple of days, and I live
So
with my
fun.
husband. Yeah, that's the fun age. And our dog Louie. We've got a big Rottweiler who looks very scary, but he's a big cuddly teddy bear.
That's even more. I have a cat named Louie as well.
Ah, there you go.
Much different in size comparison compared to your dog,
Yes.
but well, that is so great. Well, let's talk a little bit about your business. So, what made you kind of decide to switch over from being a teacher to being an entrepreneur?
So, a few different things. So, I'd always wanted to have my own business. My parents are both business owners. They've had a couple of different businesses while I was growing up. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I loved teaching. So I became a teacher, and over my career, I just knew that there were lots of kids who weren't necessarily meeting the expected standard. And in Australia, we don't keep kids back to repeat grade levels, so they keep going
Okay.
up the grades, but they've got these big learning gaps. And I just used to see that it would create some really like they would have low self-esteem and affect their mental health. They start becoming like disengaged with school and sometimes, showing some challenging behaviors. So I just wanted to be able to help those kids. And there were no like tutoring services in our local community, and the type of intervention that they needed, they'd have to travel over an hour away into our
Wow.
like CBD, and that in itself was really meant that so many kids weren't getting those services. So that's why I decided to start Wise Our Tuition.
Wow. So you saw the need and you're like, let's do it. And did
Yeah.
you like, was that your passion in teaching as well, was helping these types of learners?
Yeah. So when I first finished uni, my first job was at a special needs school,
Okay.
and I wasn't really expecting to get that posting, but that's what I was given. So that's where I went. And at the time, it wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it just really created a career path for me. So it was definitely a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. So your services now it's online, correct?
Yeah, so we do a mix of face-to-face and online lessons. So I've actually got a student in San Francisco, which
So
is pretty
fun.
cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's great being able to help people all over the place.
Yeah. And the connections that you make with that, that's really cool.
It
I mean,
is.
like you're saying, how the students, even locally, sometimes you can't get an hour. You have, both parents are working outside the home, to find the time. So I think it's really great that you're providing the versatile services that they can access, whether it's in person or online, just to meet the needs, right? I mean, that's really what you saw.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
love
really good.
that. So if, say, a student comes to you, how long do they work with you on average?
It usually depends. It depends on their age and how much they need to improve, like to catch up to their peers. Normally, a minimum of like 2 terms, so that's like 2 10-week blocks.
Okay.
And usually we say I see a big improvement in that time. If if they've got like dyslexia or something or some kind of learning difficulty going on and they have a large gap, then they might stay with us for a bit longer. But we see like a big improvement in those first 20 weeks.
Yeah. Wow. And what you were talking about in the beginning, right? The transformation of just the self-esteem and all of that and the confidence to go,
Yeah,
because I feel
yeah.
like without reading, right? I mean, I imagine every other subject in school just gets harder as you're advancing, but you're not having that skill.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. They say by about year three, year four, you stop learning to read and it's more reading to learn. So if you haven't got those basics, it makes the rest of school really challenging.
Yeah. And do you find that in this program, is there any transformation where they become book lovers themselves?
Yeah, yeah, they definitely do. Once they find the books that they can read and
Yeah.
they build that confidence, and then they're happy to go and explore and find the books that they like, that they enjoy, which I really love to see. It's
Yeah.
so nice. I had a little girl last year who came for a little while, and then she went and got The Diary of Anne Frank, and she read that and she did an assignment on it for school, and she was so proud of herself that she could read it on her own.
Yeah. And I imagine, I feel like even as adults, right? Like now I read, and when I read stories about people that maybe think areas I'm struggling in my own life, but I read a story about a character that's going through something similar, it's like, I'm not alone, right? Like there's some like peace that comes along with that. So just the journey that books can take you on if you can digest them, right? And the
Yeah.
life skills, life lessons, all that books can give us. And so that's so cool that you're giving that to these kids and opening that world for them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Well, let's talk a little bit about who you are as a reader and what genres you enjoy.
So I really enjoy, I suppose, contemporary fiction and reading about just different people's lives. I really like books that have really, lots of different characters and complicated kind of family trees and those kinds of things in them. They're the most interesting to me, especially ones that have a little bit of a mystery. Maybe not
Okay.
necessarily like true crime, but I don't really like scary things. Um, excuse
Same.
me. Um, I'm not on that true crime bandwagon that seems to be popular at the moment. Um, yeah, but have you ever read Leanne Moriarty's books? She's the
I
author of Big Little
have.
Lies. Yeah, like I love her kind of books with the lots of different characters and the mystery, but she's definitely one of my favorite authors.
Yeah, she is a wonderful author. Do you read hard copy books or do you read audiobooks?
I'm not a fan of audiobooks. I
Okay.
find I just can't concentrate on them, and other people find that really strange, but I just find my mind wanders. So I
I've
don't
heard
listen
that
to
a
audio.
lot, actually.
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I prefer a hard copy book. I got a Kindle for Christmas last year, so I've been using that a lot. And that's been great because sometimes my daughter will be like she doesn't always sleep in her own bed. So sometimes if she's in my bed and I'm awake, I can read without the light on, and the same my husband, it's not annoying anybody. So that's about it means I've been reading a lot more since I
Yeah.
got a Kindle.
Yeah, and I was just wondering because if the stories that you like, right, with the multiple people, multiple characters, I imagine that as an audiobook, if you have a lot of that going on, it would be hard to kind of keep track. We're having reading it in hard copy or Kindle form, right? It's a little bit easier to kind of keep track of character storylines and things like that.
That's true. Yeah. I've actually heard about one of the books that we're going to talk about a bit later, that it was really great in audio because they had a different narrator for every different character, that it made it interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've kind of slacked lately, actually, this summer, but I was doing a Century of Great Books challenge where I was reading a book from every year for the past century. And I had gotten a book. I actually really like audiobooks because I fit it in my free time, like when I'm cleaning or doing dishes or folding laundry, things like that. So,
Yeah.
um, but I was listening to, oh goodness, the name is skipping me right now, but it was a book written in like 1930s. And it was it felt like I was listening to like theater on the
Yeah.
audiobook because it even had like the crash boom bang of like the car crash and different characters. And so it almost was like this lively show going on. And I was thinking, I'm like, I don't know if I would have loved this book storyline as much as if I would have read it on paper versus like in audio. It felt like it came to life and how it was a production for sure in how they
Wow.
had done this audiobook. So that was really fun. So I could imagine the book we'll talk about later. I mean, it would be really interesting to listen to it like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it would be. That
So
sounds really good. Great, that book, that
yeah,
audiobook.
yeah,
Maybe I
I'll
should give
have
some more a try.
I definitely I try to do sometimes more of like personal development or um things where I'm learning. And so I might be a slower reading it on paper because it's more of a dry topic, let's say. I mean, it's not, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I will like sometimes do those as audiobooks because I'm like, oh, I'm kind of having like a lecture going on in my head and, in small
yeah.
bursts of time there.
Yes.
Um, but well, and then in your busyness of life, how do you find time to read?
So I use reading as a way to relax. So I usually read for a little bit before I go to bed. That was really my way of switching off. And yeah, so that's kind of my routine. And then yeah, if I have some time to myself, reading is probably one of my go-to things that I will do. So that's how I fit it in.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
you and me both there.
yeah.
Okay, well, and you have prepared a book flight for us to come on the show today. Why don't you
I
tell us
have.
a little bit about how the books pair together?
All right. So my three books that I've chosen are all by the same author, which is Taylor Jenkins Reid. You might have heard of it. I think her books are quite popular at the moment,
Yes,
thanks to
yeah.
like book talk and things like that.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you were going to bring this book flight because I will be honest, I've only read one book by her and I really enjoyed it. I feel like I don't know why it never floats to like the very top of my TBR to pick it up. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I'm really interested to learn more about it.
Okay. So the three books I've chosen are The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo,
Okay.
Malibu Rising, and Daisy Jones and the Six.
Okay, awesome. Well, can you tell us a little bit about, let's start with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo in case there's some listeners that haven't read it.
Okay. So it's about a lady called Evelyn Hugo, and it's set in the 1930s. I know, like old Hollywood. So that really intrigued me. I love that any books in that setting, and it's all about her life and all her different husbands. And again, there's a mystery in it, and there's lots of what I really like about Taylor Jenkins Reid is her books all the characters all interlink in the different books. So they'll be about they're totally separate books. You don't have to read them in a series or a particular order, but there's different characters that pop up through all of them, which I think is quite clever. And
Oh, I didn't know
yeah,
this because this is the only one I've read that you're bringing on the
yeah,
show today. So I didn't know that. That's really cool.
yeah, it is really cool. It's really clever. And then yeah, so and then they're also all sort of kind of based on a person from real life,
Okay.
loosely based. So you can kind of it's really fun to read it and think about, oh, who is this character like? Like which famous person is this character? And a lot of her different characters are based on real life people. So I find that really fascinating.
Yeah. So does she, like, if you were to then Google after you've read this book, does she tell you who she's loosely based it off of?
No, no.
Okay.
So you have to kind of guess, yeah. So
Okay.
if you're a bit of a pop fiction kind of person, if that's one of your interests, I think you would enjoy it.
I was like, this is where I would utterly fail. Like books are my go-to like media that I digest. My husband is the movie buff, but I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't know that I would ever be able to guess because I'm so out of pop culture questions. If there's ever trivia, I'm like, I have no idea. Like, unless it's
yeah.
in a book, I have no idea. So, but I did really enjoy this book, and I really I found it to be a page turner because I wanted to know what was going to happen. Right? There was
Yeah,
that intrigue there.
I know. I read it so quickly. I stayed up really late reading it. I think like 3 o'clock in the morning one day. It was just, I just could not put it down. Definitely, I think that one's my favorite book that
Yeah.
she's written. And I like how she has the um, little like newspaper and magazine articles throughout the story as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really fell in love with Evelyn Hugo, right? Like, because and
Yeah.
so I think for me, that's why I was drawn to this book as well, because I do love when I can fall in love with a character and really want to see what happens in their timeline of the story.
Yeah. It was, yes. She was a very interesting character. Was I actually joined a book club and we did read this book as part of the book club, and it was funny that a lot of people didn't actually like her character, but
Interesting.
yeah, but I really did.
At first, I remember thinking, being put off, like, how in the world do you have seven husbands, right? This is the part
Yeah.
of like being famous that like kind of bothers me a little bit sometimes, of just
Yeah.
of that. And but having gotten to know her through the pages of the story, I did really, then it all, it
It
comes
all
out a
made
little bit
sense.
more and you can fall in love with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't judge her by her seven husbands.
Exactly, which is what I did
Yeah.
in the beginning.
Yeah.
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 So, okay. Next, we have Malibu Rising.
Yeah. So Malibu Rising is set in kind of the 80s. It flips back and forth
Okay.
um, through different timelines. And it's all about a family, about the children of this family. And without giving too much away, there's again a little bit of a mystery. And
Okay.
one of the characters from Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo pops up in this story. So they're quite one of the main characters in this story, which I found really cool. Is you
Okay.
see
Because
that
that's, I was
person.
wondering how, like, because I didn't think timelines were the same with these books. I'm like, how does she do that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting how she does it. But yeah, this because sorry, in Malibu Rising, it flips back and forth from like the 50s and 60s to the 80s, 90s. So
Okay. Makes
yeah,
sense
it's
now.
going back and forth in time. Um, yeah, and it's about so it's set in Malibu and it's about a family and they're all surfers and they're all quite famous. So they're all very like famous people in these books. So yeah, it was probably my least favorite of her of the three.
Okay.
But then I've heard other people say they really love it, and I did enjoy it, but I liked the other two books better.
Okay. I have heard that this one, because I had a friend recommend this, she really enjoyed it. And her and I we must be on the same wavelength of books because I feel like we exchange books pretty well with one another. But she said it's all set in within 24 hours too, right?
Yeah, so the main event is all in like one day, so it's like flips
Okay.
back and forth in time. Then also like the present day is just in one 24 hours. Yes, you're right.
Okay. Because she was like, I've just never read a book like that where it had all been set in one day. And so she was like, that's what I think really intrigued her about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. And again, some other characters pop up in that are in some of her other books, like Carrie Soto is back. Is another one of her books. I
Okay.
didn't include that one in this book flight, but I've read a lot of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books,
Yeah.
as you can probably tell. Um, yeah, so she calls them her. I think there's six of them that she's going to do or has done. Her six famous women series, and then she's not going to do any more apparently.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's a good goal to set for yourself, right? Because I
yeah,
after having some authors on the show, like just the amount of time, that you put in to create a novel to get it to like the shelves it's lengthy. I mean, you have to have perseverance of spirit to do it.
yeah. I know. Yeah. Although I'm like, write more of them because I love them.
I saw this meme the other day, and I think the child was a third grader. And it was like, and the child was a voracious reader, and they're like, "Mommy, I need the next book in the series." And the mom was like, it's not out yet. And he's like, you have to be patient, right? Like trying to teach the child patience, and the patients or the child was like, no, they just need to write faster. Like, and I was like thinking in my head, like, it does not work that way.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
okay. So that was Malibu Rising. And then what is the last book of the pairing today?
Yeah, so the last book was Daisy Jones and the Six.
Okay.
Yeah, which was recently made into a mini series on Amazon Prime. So
Yeah.
I'm sure some people out there might have seen that, but I definitely much preferred the book.
Okay. So you've
Have
watched.
you seen this?
I have
Yeah.
not, and because I am a purist in this sense that I have not read this book yet, so I will not watch it until the very minimal TV or movies I watch, but I will definitely not do it now that I know, there's a book. So I would
Yeah.
have to go in order because I am kind of
Yeah.
dogmatic like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think you've got to read the book first. They're always so much better.
Yeah, I have a friend, actually, she's come on the show and they have a podcast called Off Script. And she is a
Mhm.
screenwriter, like, is her trade. And they compare books to movies, and that's how they kind of run their show. So every month they'll compare different books to movies. And they have this theory that, like, whatever form of media you digest it in first, you will usually enjoy it. So if you do watch the movie first and then read the book, you may actually enjoy the movie more.
Ah,
So they're
yeah.
like testing their theory as they go along in the show, because
Yeah.
it's her and a friend that do it. So they kind of have like a
Yeah.
spreadsheet running to see which ones they prefer. But I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And for me, I always think I kind of make a movie in my head as I'm reading.
Yeah.
So then when I see it on the screen, I'm like, no, I don't like it because that's not the movie I made.
Yeah. So true, isn't it? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's a really interesting theory.
Yeah, I don't know. Kind of play
Yeah.
the game with yourself, maybe going
Yeah.
down the road. Um, okay, so tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about this one, even though I know it's got a lot of hype, but just in case
Yeah.
listeners haven't heard of it, give us a little rundown on it.
All right. So it's about a band. It's set in the 70s and it's all from their different points of view. So the different people in the band and one of the main characters' wives as well. And so it's about their rise to fame and um it's loose and it's supposed to be loosely based on Fleetwood Mac.
Okay, I
Um
did hear this actually.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a really good read. And this is the one that I've heard is really good in the audiobook. And people have said it's like um watching or listening to a band like documentary because it's all different actors doing the different characters and
That's
music and
cool.
things in it as well. So that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm actually I do want to try that as an audiobook
Yeah.
after hearing that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna,
Yes.
as you're saying that, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go add that on my Libby app when we're done, and
Yeah.
then I'll finally read this book that I've heard so much about.
Yeah, yeah. You have to read them. I find do you ever get put off books that are really like hyped up? Like,
Totally.
do
And
you
this is, I think, why I've held out on Taylor Jenkins Reid, because I sometimes will read these books that seem like they're getting all the hype and it's such a flop for me. And then I'm like, well, what's wrong with me as a reader?
yeah,
But there's also so little time to read for me that I kind of wait to see if books linger on. And then I'm like, okay, if you've lingered on for like a year, it's time to pick it up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I've definitely tried a few lately that I've seen on like TikTok or different places that are the hype and they definitely haven't lived up to it. And I'm like, oh, why does everyone think this is so good? But I don't feel that way about her books. I think they really are worth a read.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm glad you say that because I always think like, okay, like what's wrong with me that I didn't love this book? So I'm glad to hear I'm not alone. um, okay. So,
Yeah,
and then listeners, you could read this and then you could watch the mini series that is on Amazon Prime. So
yeah,
it could
yeah.
be a really fun little experience. And then you could see which one you like better, book or movie. There
Yeah.
you go. I mean, I guess it's a mini
Maybe,
movie, but
yeah. Maybe half the listeners can do the movie first and then half the listeners can do the book first and they can report back
that
on
would be
what they
really
think is better.
Yeah, have a challenge going on over here. Is there a character tie-in with this one as well from the previous ones?
Yeah, there is, but
Okay.
I, I can't remember because that was the first book I read. It was quite a while ago. I can't
Sure.
remember which character, but I know that there is because they all interlink in some way.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes when I have read enough of the genre that someone is coming on to talk about, I love to give you a dessert pairing as a thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah.
And while I haven't read Taylor Jenkins Reid much outside of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I cannot give you one of those. But I actually, in what you've said you've liked about books, I was thinking about We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang. Have you read this?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I think you would really like it because it's got a lot of different people from the same family, but you're kind of hearing from each of them as you're reading this novel, and there's a bit of mystery about what's going on. And so I think it would really check a lot of boxes for you of things that you've said you've liked. And we discussed this on the show. I feel like it was maybe like, I know it was an episode with my friend Anne, but I think it was like episode 18. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but let me give you a little rundown of what happens in the book to just intrigue you a little bit.
Okay.
So the novel starts, it opens up, her name is Sunday Brennan, is kind of the main character of the book. And she's in her late 20s and she wakes up in a hospital in LA and she is bruised and battered after a drunk driving accident that she caused. And so she's realizing kind of at this point when she wakes up in the hospital that her life is in shambles. And she's originally from New York. So she decides that maybe it's time to go home a little bit. Although, as you start to learn about the story, you realize that she has to swallow a lot of pride to go back home. There's a lot of things she left behind, a lot of people she kind of feels like she just like left high and dry when she fled to the West Coast. So you're kind of starting to like unravel this story of like, well, why did she leave New York? Why did she run to LA? Like what happened? And so she decides that she wants to go back and kind of make amends. She's from a big family. I can't remember. I know she has a lot of brothers. I feel like there was four of them, but I can't remember exactly. And her ex fiance. So she decides she's going to go back and kind of try to make amends with them. And it's just a really beautiful story because it's kind of going back and forth between these characters and it's like unfurling the past, but letting them kind of heal from that as well. And so it's just a really beautiful, like contemporary fiction, family drama, lots of character storylines. And I think it ends as a really great story. So I think it might be something you would enjoy.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and I'll have it in the
Yeah.
show notes and all of that as well.
Okay.
So again, I know it's not Taylor Jenkins Reid,
Yeah,
but from
that's
having
okay.
yeah. The other thing is when she goes back, one other big point is the brothers own this pub together with the ex-fiance. And so the business is failing. So she kind of steps
Mhm.
in to help them like rescue this. And it's been in the family business for a really long time. So she kind of steps back in to try to help them. But as you can imagine, they're kind of resistant to like, well, you left us like, and now you're back and now you're trying to tell us what to do. So like there's a lot of dynamics at play in the book,
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed this. I did listen to this one as audio and I devoured it because I had to know what was going to happen. So,
Yeah. That sounds great. I'm gonna go and look it up. And
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you
Sounds
think
great.
when you get to it.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Well, and how I like to end our show is what they're called our bonus pairings, which are just a speed round of questions. So you can answer these really quick. So,
Okay.
where is your favorite place to read?
Or in on my couch, like cozy on my couch when it's raining outside.
Nice. Are you a rereader?
No, no. I usually only read something once.
Okay. What are you reading next?
Well, I'm definitely gonna look up We Are the Brennans.
Okay.
That sounds really good. But I have been working my way through Reese Witherspoon's book club.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so I'm working through some books from there at the moment.
Okay. And she
Yeah,
does that every month, right? She has a book that is part of her list.
yeah, she does. Yeah, so I've actually gone back I'm not reading like the most current ones. I've been going back through her list and I've read a couple and they're really good. So I thought, oh, I'll keep going with these ones.
I feel like way back a few years ago, I remember following her on social media to get like the book clubs. And I'm like thinking in my head, like, I have not seen any of her posts pop up. You know how social media does that weird thing where
Yeah.
like if you don't interact, then you don't see them. And I'm like, I'm going to have to go back and look at that because now that you bring that up, it's like I totally forgot she had a book club.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how it does that. Hey, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
I can't remember the name of the one that I'm reading at the moment, but I just finished Counterfeit and I can't remember who it's by, but that was really good.
Okay. Well, we'll look it up for the show notes. So we'll have that in there, listeners. So,
Yeah.
well, and then the last thing I didn't ask actually is how, if listeners are like wanting to find out about your business, what's the best way to find you?
Okay, so if you head to our website, which is wiseourtuition.com,
Okay.
you can find us there. But if you type in Wise Our Tuition on any social media, it'll take you to our social media sites as well.
Okay, perfect. And I will, of course, have the links in the show notes as well, listeners. But just in case you're like, oh, I want to check this out now, you can grab that. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Emily Fogg and her book flight of Taylor Jenkins Reid books. We'd love to hear what other books you'd pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. That is also where you can find more information on today's flight and any other books that we talked about today. I want to inspire a community of readers. So whenever you share a post about what you are reading or what you are picking up next, especially if you have heard about the book on the show, please tag us. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Bookish Flights. This is a brand new show, so if you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give the show a review. Your review not only helps me, but it also helps the show reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure that you will not miss an episode. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.